Hello everyone, this is Gary from Fantastic Fundas, and in this lecture we are going to talk about the rise of the left wing. And as I said in the last lecture that the left wing was rising at this time after the CDM phase, but what is the background in which this is happening, and why is this happening, and how is this happening, and in what shape it happens? We'll answer all the questions. Now let's see. National struggle is happening. Okay, let me just put it here. National struggle is happening, and there is also a struggle for social economic emancipation of the country. Okay, social economic emancipation. One is political emancipation. This is a national struggle for that, and then is social economic emancipation of whom? Of the suppressed classes. Okay, obviously they are the most concerned people for their social economic emancipation, and exploit it, they, and these two movement, these two, okay, this one and this one, they started coming together, and that led to rise of what is called as the left wing. Right now, two powerful people, okay, parties which are associated with this are, number one is the Communist Party of India, and number two is the Congress Socialist Party. So we are going to talk in details about these two. And two important leaders at this time are, who are they? One is, of course, one is J.L. Nehru, Jawaharlal Nehru, J.L. Nehru, and number two is the S.C. Bose. Okay, now that's the third thing actually which is happening at this time. We'll talk about these also, right? But it's not just that our socio-economic political struggle had combined to become the left, led to the rise of the story of the left wing. There's more to it. And what is that thing? What can be? Can you think of it? Okay, so if you can think of it, wonderful. If you cannot, let me tell you, that is called as Russian Revolution, and it happened on 7 November 1917. This Russian Revolution, you know this thing story, right? That there was something called Bolshevik Party in Russia. It was overthrown by Lenin. Okay, and Bolshevik Party was led by Lenin. I'm sorry. Bolshevik, it was led by Lenin, and they overthrew the Tsarist regime. Tsarist, you can think of some people who were suppressing people, and during the formation, and they were formed what is called as, together they formed what is called as the socialist state. Okay, USSR was formed, right? Now this regime electrified the colonial world. Everyone was like, we can also renounce the imperial rights. If these Russians can, they can fight the might of Tsar, then what can we not do? So it gave a lesson to the Indians that, and because of this, Marxism, mainly followed by the Bolshevik Party, was the peer attraction to the people. Okay, and number 10, that was one thing, right? And last thing was, at this time only, and how was it manifested? Through the rise of the trade unionism. This was happening. Okay, so how is this happening now? I have answered you why. Okay, but how is this going to happen now in India? Very easy. What are the reasons for how it spread, the socialism? See, first of all, you understand why it spreads. There are few reasons I've discussed. More reason in why our youngsters are unhappy with NCM CDM. Okay, NCM CDM, that could not yield exact result, and people are unhappy with Gandhi also at this time. Gandhian policy. People were unhappy with the Swarajist program also, and there was the Great Depression of 1930s. Okay, we draw attention to Marxism, socialism. Okay, that is how it was going on. Anyway. But at this time, there were how this was spreading among these reasons. Okay, there were books, there were magazines, there were pamphlets, there were associations. Okay, books, magazines, pamphlets, association. What are these? Okay, a lot of factual information coming for you. Get ready for this. For example, over here there was a leader called S.A. Dange. S.A. Dange, and he published a pamphlet. His full name is Shripad Amrit Dange, and he published a pamphlet called as Gandhi versus Lenin. Okay, and he also started the first socialist, first socialist weekly, which is known as the Socialist. These were started over here by S.A. Dange. And at this time there was another important person. His name is Muzaffar Ahmad. He starts what is called as Navyug. Okay, and then there must be school, Navyug Public High School. So many districts in India have this school, Navyug Public High Schools. And nothing of historical importance, just a matter of coincidence that so many schools name their school as this. Anyway, and also at this time there Muhammad Muzaffar Ahmad is there, and Then there is another person called Nazrul Islam, okay, and Nazrul Islam started a journal at this time, the name of which was Dhoomketu, such a nice name, Dhoomketu. One was Navyug and Dhoomketu, and these two people put together, okay, this Muzaffar Ahmad and Nazrul Islam together, you know, they started what is called as Langal, Langal. Together they started this thing called as Langal. Now this person Muzaffar Ahmad, okay, let me just change the color for sake of convenience. Muzaffar Ahmad, okay, Muzaffar Ahmad, he also was part of the organization or of the group that organized the Labour Swaraj Party of Indian National Congress, okay, and along with obviously there are few people involved in this Labour Swaraj Party. Who were these people? One was this Muzaffar Ahmad, this guy only, Nazrul Islam, okay. These two people together they started Langal, and you can say that Labour Swaraj Party, both starting from L, together they like to work on the L, okay. They had a lot of love, you can remember it this way, right? And then third person over here was Hemant Sarkar in this, okay, and this was in 1925. Just in case if you don't remember this, I can tell you a formula to remember this. You can say, think of it as, you just have to remember the word Hemant, okay. Hemant, H is for Hemant, and then Muzaffar Ahmad is there in the word, and then Nazrul Islam, N is there in Hemant, so you can remember that also, Nazrul Islam, okay. So Hemant himself is there, and Muzaffar Ahmad is there, and Nazrul Islam is also there. And if you okay, anyway, so this is what was done by them, okay. Not only this, these are all socialist organizations only, okay. And then after this there was also formation of what is called as Inqilab, okay, and it was in Punjab, okay. In Punjab there was Ghulam Hussain. Now he brought what is called as Inqilab, right? And in Madras, M. Singaravelu, he was quite active, okay. Singaravelu, he was very active. He brought this Labour Kisan Gazette, okay. I just cannot help this, you will have to remember these names. He also started Labour Kisan Party. We just talked about Labour Swaraj Party, if you remember that. Hemant, okay, H for Hemant, M is Muzaffar Ahmad, and for Nazrul Islam, if the word letter Hemant itself says all the name. This band started Labour Kisan Party, okay. And at this time only people like Nehru, Jawaharlal Nehru, obviously I mean, okay, and Bose and Chandrasekhar Azad and Bhagat Singh, all these people, you know, they were quite active working towards socialism. Obviously, you know, I'm talking about the earlier phase. This is somewhere in 1930s. Before that, actually, you know, Bhagat Singh dies on 23rd March. I've already talked to you about that, right? So within the Congress, okay, and this is not just this outside thing, but within Congress, if I talk about it, within Congress there were also many groups working. For example, there was a left-wing tendency under the leadership of Nehru. You know, Nehru became the president of the Congress in 1936 and 37. If you read Nehru's autobiography, you will find that in that he mentions that he was expecting to be the president of the Congress in the 1936, and at this time he was in Switzerland for the treatment of his wife, and who eventually died there only, okay. And Nehru of course was there in 1929 also, right? Anyway, so S.C. Bose, if I talk about him, S.C. Bose, these are two very important people. He was the president of the Congress in 1938 and 1939, so 36, 37, 38, 39. In continuation, this is happening, okay. So in continuation, the person with the leftist trend are the head of the Congress at this time. Okay, 38th session is very important session. We'll talk about this a little later. This is Haripura session. 39 is the Tripuri session. Tripuri is, this place is near Jabalpur. Some people also call it Jabalpur session, but this should be called as Tripuri session. And we'll talk about this, how this was a controversy, and here from the fight between Gandhi and sort of a fight between Gandhi and Bose is also there at this time, okay. And Congress Socialist Party is also formed. We are going to talk about that also in detail, right? But let's talk about a little more about the socialism in India and the Jawaharlal Nehru's advent on the nationalist scene of India. Okay, we're talking about Nehru over here. So let me just talk to you a little more detail about Nehru now. So we are talking about Nehru and his advent in Indian scene and socialism. There was a notion, okay, that freedom couldn't be defined in political terms, but it also must have a socio-economic content. And so that means freedom is about not just about political, but it is also about socio-economic. And this trend, better put, this thought became quite popular, and it was mainly associated with Nehru. And in his books Autobiography and Glimpses of the World History, he repeatedly propagated the idea of socialism. Nehru was the president of Congress, as I said earlier, in 1929, and also in 1930, and after that in 36 and 37. Okay, we know these sessions. Okay, these are the Lahore and then Lucknow and Fazpur session. This is Lucknow session and this is Fazpur session. Now, Nehru became interested in this social economic question right in 1921, when he came in touch with the peasant movement in Uttar Pradesh. We've talked about this, that how he got into touch with the peasant movement in Uttar Pradesh. And in 1927, Nehru attended the International Conference Against Colonial Oppression and Imperialism at Brussels, okay, so what is also known as the Brussels Conference. And then in 1928, Nehru joined with S.C. Bose to form what is called as the Independence for India League, okay, Independence for India League. This is what they joined over there, 1928, right? And for complete independence, of course, and a socialist revision of the economic structure of the country. So there were two themes. One was complete independence, the socialistic revision of the whole country. Right now, Nehru has dedicated a chapter in his autobiography where he's criticizing Gandhi and for refusing to recognize the confluence of classes, for preaching harmony among the exploiters and the exploited. Gandhi had the idea that we should have, between the person who is exploiter and the person who is getting exploited, even they should develop harmony and live together after resolving their dispute. It's a very noble thought, but Nehru criticized it, okay? And but we might keep in mind one thing, that Nehru did not separate himself from Congress. In fact, he thought that he would reform the Congress from within and bring the change in the Congress and make it with the leftist tendency, okay? In 1936, this session at Lucknow over here, what happens that in presidential address, Nehru urges the Congress to accept socialism as its goal and to bring itself closer to peasantry and the working class. So he focuses on adopting a socialism as his goal over here, right? And as Congress to get closer to peasantry and working class. So this, Nehru felt that this was the best way of weaning away of Muslims from communalism, okay? And he also was the person when a resolution on FR and economic policy was passed by Karachi session. We read this earlier, okay? Rajendra Prasad composed it, okay? So he was it was also on the urging, okay? Who urged that thing? It was also urging on the Jawaharlal Nehru. We did this in the earlier lecture, okay? So that was pretty much about Nehru. But then the next person important trend over here regarding, as I told earlier, one was the Nehru and Bose. We'll talk about Bose a little later. Then we'll talk about now CPI, the Communist Party of India. Communist Party of India. How was this formed in the whole story? It was formed by Shri M.N. Roy. Okay, Shri M.N. Roy. Manvendranath Roy, who's also known as Narendranath Bhattacharya ji. M.N. Roy, he along with Lenin, they helped in evolving the Communist international policy towards the colony. So he's the person, he and Lenin, because of which we have leftist trend in the colonies. And many people, 7 such Indians, they under the leadership of the M.N. Roy, they met in Tashkent in 1920, and over they set up the Communist Party of India. Now it is set up in 1920 over here. There is some, but official announcement, official group which comes is in the 1924 only, which is little later than this, okay? And after 20 there were many other communist forms in India, okay? And after 1920, okay, what happens that after 1920 many communist groups in India, many groups. And all these groups get together in 1925 at Kanpur, okay, at Kanpur. That's 24 or 25, I believe, right? So and they founded what is All India organization under the name of the Communist Party of India. This was the real party over here, and this was at this time the leader of this party, of the Communist Party of India. Who was the leader of this party? It was under the leadership of the person called as Satya Bhakt. In earlier lecture also, one of the lectures I have named this. He was the president of this, okay, and Satyabhat, and sorry, he was the main leader, okay, and the presidentship at this time of this was under Singaravelu, whom I just named a few minutes back. Also, Singaravelu was the person, okay, and what was their objective at this time? The objective of the CPI that was formed over here, it was freedom from British rule. Number one is freedom from British rule. Number two is reorganization of the society on the basis of the redistribution, common ownership of the controls of means of production in hands of society and community. Okay, redistribution, or what is known as socialism, you can just simply call it. Okay, and CPI, it called its member. Okay, number three is CPI. They said call it member to join the Congress and reform the party, form a left wing within the party, reform the party. Okay. Actually, what is happening, that this person, he was of the view that communist movement must be independent of any other movement. Number one, and it should have a participation of worker and peasant. In fact, he also established a training school as to train frontier tribes. Okay, training school was formed by them. Training school was formed for them by them, so that for the revolt, and they were tried actually for in what is known as called as the Peshawar conspiracy case in 1922-23. This was happening, right? Anyway, so as I just said that there were many groups formed. Let me just talk about these many other groups that were formed at this time. Okay, many groups I said. Okay, what were these groups formed? What I'll talk about them now, right? Okay, I'll have to clear the screen for this. Many groups. Let me not change the color so that you remember that many groups were formed. And what are these groups? For example, main form of political work at this time was carried on by the peasants and the workers party. Okay, workers party and the peasant. And the first labor party was organized over here. It was called as the labor Swaraj labor Swaraj party. Okay, and this was of INC only, and this was organized by few people. For example, it was organized by, you can actually think of only Hemant only. I have already named him. Hemant is there, Muzaffar Ahmad is there, and Nazrul Islam is there, right? I hope you remember Muzaffar Ahmad, Navyog, and Nazrul Islam. Along with him, together they brought Langal and all the story that I just mentioned to you just a few minutes back, right? Dhoomketu was brought by Nazrul Islam, that way, right? Now, late 1926, let me just change color this because this is not quite clear. In 1926, what happens that Congress Labour Party is formed in Bombay. Okay, Congress Labour Party. This is Labour Swaraj Party, and this is the Congress Labour Party. Where is this? This is in Bombay. Number two is there Kirti Kisan Party. Kirti Kisan parties were quite popular in Punjab, and in 1928, at this time I'm talking about the leftist trend, how it is growing parallelly. All these provincial groups that were being made, they were together organized into what is called as the Workers and Peasants Party. Okay, there's just two P's, not the third P. Worker and the Peasant Party. So Nehru welcomed the efforts of WPP in Congress. He said, okay, you are welcome in Congress, whatever you are doing, and WPP played important role. Okay, let me talk to you about WPP now. WPP, Workers and the Peasant Party. So what happens is that this first of all they were welcomed, right? Then WPP played important role in enabling the communists to get a strong position in working class. Because of the Worker and the Peasant Party, they could form a base hold in the working class. Number two is that it was very active in Bombay and Punjab. As I said, Bombay, they formed this what is called as Congress Labour Party, and in Punjab there were Kirti Kisan Sabhas. So that shows they were very active over there, and with many journals. For example, they brought the journal called Kranti, and they also brought a journal called Mehnat Kush. Okay, I'm not sure of the spelling, Mehnat Kush, something like that, and with focus on the abolition of the exploitative system, right? And number three is they were talking about, for example, Sohan Singh Josh is an important person over here. Sohan Singh Josh, he was the leader of the Worker Peasant Party in Calcutta at this time. Number four is that CPI had a strong link with the trade union. Okay, for example, they had a trade link of CPI with whom? Number one, number A is railway workshop worker. Okay, railway workshop workers. They together they did the strike also. This was in 1927 at Kharagpur. This was a railway, okay, workshop. And number two is the textile market. Okay, if it is textile, it has to be in Ahmedabad. Sorry, it was in Bombay. And in those strikes, important role was, and in all these strikes that are happening over here, important role is played by a very important name which is known as Girni Kamgar. Okay, Girni Kamgar. Let me just write it here. Girni Kamgar. Important role was played, and which was this union actually was democratically elected and from grassroots. Okay, workers union, it was being organized, right? So this is how the communism is spreading. But okay, now we are left with Subhash Chandra Bose. I'll talk to you that in a little while, probably in the next lecture only, or maybe in this one. Let me just see that according to the time left. Now, we are going to talk about the fall of communism now. There were two main reasons actually. Number one is that there was severe repression by the British government, and there was series of conspiracy cases, and they were sentenced to long imprisonment. And for example, if you talk about let's say March 1929 to 32, radical political and trade union activists, they were arrested, right? In fact, there were 3 Britishers also who were arrested. You can remember their name by this mobile phone over here. Okay, I'll just make it easy for you to remember this, right? And this is your mobile phone, and this is your signal over here. This is your mobile phone. So what are their name? One is the Hutchinson, okay, and this mobile company, this mobile is of Philips, right? And you can remember their names by and third person was over here was Ben Bradley. Okay, so you can just remember this figure. This will help you remember the things easily. Who are the 3 very important people, right? One is the Phillips Pratt, and the Hutchinson, Lester Hutchinson, and Ben Bradley. These 3 people were there, right? Now they were to support trade unionist movement in India, and 32 people were put on trial together. What is known as the Meerut conspiracy case. Meerut conspiracy case. And after this, the defense of these people, it was taken. These people over here in this case, it was taken by leaders like Nehru and Ansari and Chagla, MC Chagla. Okay, and these speeches were made while defense was carried on. They were printed in the newspapers, and government wanted basically to isolate the communists. What was the government strategy? To isolate the communists from the main nationalistic movement, which had got united after a great difficulty. If you remember, I started this lecture by telling you that social, economic, political movement was getting united, and government wanted to isolate this thing. They just wanted to break this thing only, that this was being done over here. Okay. And then at this time government succeeded in depriving the communist leadership of its of the communist movement of its main leadership at this time. So communists resorted to what is called as sectarian politics, and the leftist deviation was being now broken. And the communists broke up with the INC at this time. Okay, so communist and INC, they also get divided at this time, and they declared that INC is a party of bourgeois. Bourgeois is the rich class, the capitalists, the merchant, the rich people. And Nehru and Bose, they were also criticized. They were also Nehru and Bose were declared as the agents of the bourgeois. And in 1931, it so happened that Gandhi-Irwin Pact was described by communists as a betrayal of nationalism. Okay, and WPP, the worker and peasant parties, also started getting dissolved. And finally, and in 1934, it finally so happened that government declared CPI itself as illegal. Government declared CPI illegal. This is how it so all happened. Okay, now, but then in spite of this downfall, the CPI movement, there was still some survival of the communist movement during this phase. And why was that phase happening over here? Now I'll just talk to you about that. Okay, what are the reasons? Because please understand that all these people, even though they had conflict with Congress, number one is that they refused to separate themselves from the CDM. They did take part in CPM. as the CDM. Number two is that the socialist and the communist ideas, they kept on spreading, so the ideas were now spreading. Number three is that PC Joshi, okay, Communist Party was organized by them. PC Joshi, he was an important leader over here, and the theoretical basis and the political basis for change in political communist politics was given. Okay, theoretical basis of the communist politics was changed at this time, and that was given by what is called as Dutt Bradley thesis. Dutt Bradley thesis. Yeah, they are the same people. Dutt we just talked about it, and Bradley is Ben Bradley. So that Bradley, it said that the National Congress could play a great part and a foremost part in the working of realizing the anti-imperialist people's front. Okay, so they were trying to reconcile with the Congress through what is called as the Bradley thesis, and the attitude of the communists toward the Congress had started changing after the after the Dutt Bradley thesis, and now they were calling on its member to join the Congress. That is how things are moving on. Okay, now in this background, okay, in this background comes over here what is known as the Congress Socialist Party. We have talked about CPI, we talked about Nehru, we still are yet to do regarding leftist and about the SC Bose we'll talk about, and now we're going to talk about Congress Socialist Party. Okay, Congress Socialist Party, Congress Socialist Party. What is happening in this? Actually, this Congress Socialist Party, this movement for its formation, it started in jails only when people were in jail 1930-31, and then from 1932 to 34, it was by congressmen who were disenchanted with the Gandhian philosophy and strategy and leadership and ideology. And jails, ab jail mein kya kare? You're sitting idle in jail, do something. What do? You study books, and what do they study? Marxism, socialist ideas. Why? Because they were very popular at that time. You must be aware of what is happening in the world. We have seen Russian Revolution also. So in jail they studied this, and they were in disagreement with the Communist Party of India also. So they formed what is called as the Congress Socialist Party rather than this thing, and there were a lot of members in this party also. And who are these members? I'll just name few of them for you. Okay, so who are these members? This was formed in basically 1934 only. Okay, and it was formed in Bombay, 1934 October. This was formed. Who were the main leader? Number one leader was a Jay Prakash Narayan. Number one. Number two, he wrote books like probably book or whatever it was. He wrote Why Socialism. He explains that, and he was also the secretary of this Congress Socialist Party. And then there was Acharya Narendra Dev, and he was the president of the Congress Socialist Party. Number three, at this time, very important person was Acharya Narendra Dev was very active in NCM also, if you remember. No, he's quite a veteran in fighting Britishers. And then there was Minnu Masani was there. And then after that, there were so many other people. For example, there was Yusuf Mehroli. And number five, there was Ram Manohar Lohia was there. He was also active from here. And the first session of the Congress Socialist Party, the first session of this, session. Now this first session, it was held in Bombay, as I told you, where it was founded in 1934 only, right? And the president at this time, this thing over I'm talking about, it was Dr. Sampurnanand. Okay, now basically they all agreed on five basic propositions. This Congress Socialist Party, all of them, all the leaders over here, they agreed on five propositions. What are those propositions? I'll just name five propositions. What are those? Number one is primary struggle of India was the national struggle, and nationalism was necessary to socialism. So nationalism is necessary, only then you can have socialism. Number one. Number two is socialists must work inside the Congress, and it was the primary body fighting for the national struggle. So you have to fight within the Congress. Number three is they must give Congress and the nationalist movement a socialist direction. So number three is get involved in the Congress and give it a socialist direction. Number four, for objectives to be achieved, they must organize the workers and peasants in their class organization. So organization of worker and peasant was there. Number five, they would call each other comrades and stick on to the policy of the socialism at that time, right? So they basically, when they entered the Congress, now as I told you, they said that so Congress has to be made socialist. When they entered the Congress over here, I'm just explaining you this part. What they did was They changed the Congress in two method. One was in the ideological sense. What do you mean by ideological sense? That gradual persuasion of the congressmen to adopt socialistic pattern and more radical pro-labor, pro-peasant. Okay, so the keywords over here are over here. Let me just change the color and write it here only. Number one is by persuasion, and that's one, and number two is pro-labor and then pro peasant. Okay, pro peasant, that's one, right? Now number two, one was that this was the ideological dimension of it. The other dimension, as I said, is the organizational dimension, in which the top leadership was to be displaced. Okay, so over here they are talking about the replacing the leadership in the Congress, and this time only a thing was given which is called as the merit thesis. See, communists, they like to give a lot of theses. Okay, the Bradley thesis. Now this is Merit thesis, to bring the Congress leadership from representing the bourgeois class to the leadership of the socialism. They kept on calling, oh, you are bourgeois, oh, you are bourgeois, but we'll change you, we'll make you leadership of socialism. Without you, country cannot rise. You are a bourgeois. Without you, country cannot rise. Without you, left cannot rise. You are a bourgeois. They had this rat laga rakhi thi, right? So at this time there was no alternative in any case, to Gandhi's leadership. So whenever there was a dispute between the socialists, obviously they would have disputes because they were not in 100% agreement. So Socialist Congress or Congress Socialist Party, or the under the, which was of course under Nehru at that time, they always gave way to Congress. Okay, because they knew that there is no other way out, and they were also criticized, right, as they didn't lend this. But these people, communists and all, they also didn't lend their support to SC Bose in 1939. Actually, what had happened in the case of SC Bose, when SC Bose had confrontation with Gandhiji, okay, and on who's to be the next president of the Congress. Gandhi wanted Pattabhi Sitaramaiah to be the president, and Pattabhi lost, and Gandhi said it's my personal defeat. But in any case, the socialist people did not support him. There was moral pressure on SC Bose, and he had to resign from there. Okay, that was the little story of SC Bose. We'll talk about this story a little while. Okay, so there were three ideologies, I can say, which were being in play of the socialism at this time. Number one was the Marxian, number two was the Fabianism, and number three was the current philosophy, which was being influenced by Gandhian philosophy. Okay, what is the Marxian philosophy? Simple, focuses on the class relation and societal conflict. The idea is over here societal conflict. This is not the right place to discuss the Marxian concept, because there's more part of world history we'll talk there. And Marxian, the Fabian concept is say that for socialism to be achieved, it can be achieved through peaceful means, through democracy also. In the socialist ideas, they need not necessarily be, there's no need of radical reforms at that time. Okay, and the third was the Gandhian philosophy, which we have been discussing so far. Okay, and so at this time, SC Bose, this person over here, he founds the Forward Bloc also, Bloc, and this he does in 1939 after he was compelled from the leadership, as I told you, from the presidentship of the Congress. Okay, anyway, we'll talk about him later. Now, communists who work outside any left-wing group, because there were a lot of communists not just inside the working over here, they were outside also. For example, there was Hindustan Socialist Republic Association. We have done this already in detail. And then there were also what is known as a group called Trotskyist. Trotskyist is actually, this is also a form of socialism. Trotskyism is the theory of Marxism actually, okay, and it was as advocated by a person called as Leon Trotsky. So any particular concept is there, okay, and there were other people. For example, there was Indulal Yagnik. This person was working outside, right? He joined at Kheda with Patel, right? He was active with Annie Besant also, and he was All India Kisan movement ka part also. Anyway, he was such a person. Indulal Yagnik, we talked about him earlier also. And then there was Swami Shahjanand Saraswati. Okay, Swami Shahjanand Saraswati, and he works in All India Kisan Sabha. But everyone shared a common political program which enabled them to work together after 1935, and that was to make socialism a current trend in the Indian politics. Okay, Okay, so now before we move ahead, I just missed one thing, and that was few more aspects of the Congress Socialist Party. You see, the Congress Socialist Party, yeah, it was part of Congress, of course, and its programs included few things. And for example, to organize the workers and peasants for their own upliftment. Number one is organize workers and peasants for their own upliftment. As I said earlier, also about the organization of them, right? Few about apart from those things, and then they also wanted to promote youth and the women organization. This I earlier did just missed to say that. And then to resist the British attempt of involving Indians in any kind of imperialist war. So Indians should not be involved in war, that was another aim. And to refuse acceptance of piecemeal legislation proposed by the Britishers, okay, piecemeal legislation, right? And then the desire of the Congress Socialist Party was acceptance of the program of the Congress, along with along with the side also development of a blueprint of the socialist society in India. Okay, so they wanted to transfer all the powers, all power to the masses, party, the people. Number 6 is that the economic activity controlled by the state, and number 7 is the socialization of the key industry. Okay, socialization of key industry, and then redistribution of land among the people, and then also adult franchise is to be used for elections. So all these things were also part of the Congress Socialist Party. If anything comes in paper, you can get, tick mark anything in your prelim exam which you can think related to socialism. They were talking about that. Number 10, let me just complete it for you. For example, they said there cannot be any discrimination by the state on the basis of the gender and religion. So that is a communist idea, a socialist idea, not communist, a socialist idea. Thus, it can be said that the socialism and independence were the twin objectives at this time. Okay, and further, for the CSP, it got encouragement from Nehru and Subhash, right? Though they were not part of the Congress Socialist Party as such. Okay, I mean Nehru and SC Bose. Okay. So at Lucknow session in 1936, Nehru had many, there were many members who were socialists as well as part of Congress Working Committee. And Congress also accepted the agrarian program by the Fazpur session. One of the reasons that I just wanted to mention to you about the Fazpur session of 1936, where Nehru was the head, they accepted the agrarian growth. Okay, the agrarian program, agrarian. Let me just write it properly. Agrarian program, right? So this became part of the official Congress from Fazpur session of December 1936. It had ideas like reduction of land revenue, abolition of feudal levies, and introduction of cooperative farming even. Okay, now this is a very typical thing that came over here, and that was cooperative farming over here from this session. And then also a CSP played a role in the formation of what is called as the All India Kisan Congress. And okay, we'll talk about in the coming lecture in detail about All India Kisan Sabha also. And they also supported the leadership of Subhash Chandra Bose at Haripura and Tripuri, right? Though some of them didn't, they are criticized for that, right? And Congress Socialist Party okay, this party took active part in Quit India movement also, and by organizing underground activities. They also opposed partition of India and termed it as surrender of nationalism before communalism. They were in opposition, of course. They believed in Hindu-Muslim unity, which have been sustained by fulfilling economic needs of both the communities. They believed that if the economic needs of the people are fulfilled, then this is possible. But after independence, there were different groups and organizations coming into being, such as Krishak Mazdoor Praja Party. Let me just write it here. Krishak Mazdoor Prajak Party, Praja Party, and this was under Acharya Kripalani ji. So Kripalani ke paas thi ye, he was the head of this Krishak Mazdoor Praja Party, so as to propagate the ideas of socialism at this time. So that is how this was going on. Now regarding SC Bose, it will take me a few lectures before I talk about him. I'll talk about him when I reach 1939 only, not before that. Okay, so it's just a pending thing from this lecture, right? Anyway, so what is but then it was left successful. It wasn't so successful as it should have been, because socialist idea could not develop hegemony over the nationalist movement as was their idea. So socialist idea, right, it could not get above the or let's say not this, it could not get above of the nationalist movement. This was not happening, right? Number one. Number two is that they fought Congress on the wrong issues. That is their another problem. They either trailed behind the leadership or they were isolated. They did not have ideological or tactical flexibility. They said whatever we say, we stick to those ideas only. We do not want any other kind of ideas to be executed at this time. Okay. And then they blame Congress that they were compromising with imperialism. But the right wing had little difficulty in discharging that. For example, when it came to 1936, see, left was saying you are collaborating with imperialism. This was their accusation. But the right for rightist, I mean the Congress, was very easy. For example, in 1936-37, when the Congress won on the issue of election and office acceptance, which was seen as a compromise with imperialism, but left fought the Congress within. That's another area where they are fighting. Number two is from 1939 to 42. The fight was in the issue of the initiation of mass struggle and Gandhi's reluctance for that, and Congress agreed to Gandhi for that. Number three is the issue of 1945 to 47, when left confronted the dominant Congress leadership, okay, including Nehru and Maulana Azad, the question of transfer of power, which were seen as a British imperialism last-ditch effort to prolong their domination. During all these whiles, Congress came back very strongly, and the accusation that the left, by the left, that the right was favoring British was wrong. With the exception of Nehru, everyone, the whole of the left, they left the Congress. They left the Congress leadership, and they call it as the leadership of the bourgeois. Now, it saw effort, to run the movement in disciplined manner and in putting restrictions. They learned the value of the discipline. That is one of their achievements over here. But anyway, they overestimated support among the masses. The left felt that they are supported by whole of the masses, but that was not true. They overestimated their support, and different left parties were not united. So there was lack of unity, and temperamental differences were there. Nehru and Bose, Nehru and Bose, they were bickering publicly in 1939 about their different ideas, and socialists and communists were now fighting each other. So socialist versus communist, it had grown into that idea. But all is not bad. There were some good things also. For example, if you talk about what is the impact of left, it was not small, it was pretty good, because the workers and the peasant party was organized, number one. Number two, it's what was the impact on Congress? 33% of the votes were now impacted by left. In fact, in 1939, S.C. Bose defeated Pattabhi Sitaramaiah on the presidential candidate of the Congress because of this voting system only. And for the first time, the right wing within the Congress accepted that the poverty and the misery of the Indian people were the result not only of colonial administration, but also the internal social economic structure of Indian society, which needs to be transformed. So for the first time, this is being accepted, that our social economic structure is also responsible for the poverty of the people. And then there was Karachi session. We know this thing. It was because of left only in Karachi session 1931 that resolution on FR and economic upliftment of the policy was adopted. And then in 1936 at the Fazpur session, there was a resolution on economic policy, and 1938 there was formation of the National Planning Committee. Okay, and all this have been discussed in different chapters, so don't worry about them. Now, active role was also played by women over here. That was another thing. And CPI and CSP, they were set up. That's a major achievement, because CPI party still exists. I'm not sure. I don't know about what happened to CSP though. It might or might not be there. You can always check it and share it in the comment section. Okay. So that's how it went, kept on going on, right? The things didn't stop here in 1938. For example, in 1945 also, the Congress Working Committee, they adopted a resolution recommending abolition of landlordism. So that was in 1945. So these things, this way things kept on going on, and resolution after resolution was being passed. Okay, and outside the party also, that I all talked about P.C. Joshi and the foundation of Congress Socialist Party. All these people, they were very active. All these are the outcomes of the leftist trend, the Forward Bloc formation, and All India Student Federation and All India Progressive Writer Association. They were also from All India Student Federation and All India Progressive Writer Association. Repression. So this is another important one. This was formed in 1930s, which came into limelight. Okay, and Nehru was head of the All India Bengal Student Conference. I've already discussed that with you. Okay, so this was pretty much about the leftist trend. Okay, and now in the next lecture I am going to talk to you about a few things. For example, what is to be done. Okay, because you see what has happened, that after 1934 the movement overall had weakened up. Okay, now what to do next? This is question of strategic debate, that how to fight Britishers after this. Ab kare kya? This must be the question in your mind. It should be the question in your mind if you have understood the lectures well so far. Okay, what to do from 1934 onwards, we'll discuss this, and then we'll also discuss this in meanwhile the third, because of the third RTC. I told you there came Government of India Act. Okay, we'll talk about the details of this act, right? And then after that I'll also talk about the various issues that of the debate that came on, whether we should fight elections, because in 1937 elections are also coming up, whether to fight elections or not. So that debate is also being discussed in the next lecture. Okay, now quickly before I go, I just have, did you share this lecture? Ask yourself, because you are getting it for free, you are enjoying this, right? You are learning so much, but are you doing your part? Are you sharing this lecture, or are you clicking on the like button? And finally, you know, if you want this video and all the future videos to come right into your email box, then you will need to subscribe to us. For this you will need to click over here, right? So that's all, and thank you so much for watching this video.